We are so many sessions in now. We are a lot of sessions in. Now is a really useful time to think about what for, fictionally speaking, what for. Well, now that the artist has really enjoyed a bunch of crazy bullshit with every character, and now that a whole bunch of sarcastic or painful social commentary and science fiction has been made, now that we have, without planning on it, different characters have taken on different thematic roles. Particularly for Zebediah, I think it's very clear where he stands thematically. Earth's First Mind also is pretty interesting this way. You know, he's kind of, it's almost like we've seen him a little bit with the other characters, but in some ways he's like the backup story in the back of the comic, you know? But it's been an interesting backup story with its own, you know, its own points. Whereas Demetrius and the Chao Chinlao and the Azimuth thing, that particularly for Azimuth, we haven't really had a story for him yet with his brother and with all kinds of things and all the rest of it. And so it may be that he never gets it this time around, or it may be that we care. Maybe we don't care, maybe we care. I don't know. You know,
I was happy enough chipping in with what was going on with Zebediah and Diamonds.
You had a lot of activity, that's for sure. And really, in some ways, the whole Chin Lao sequence was kind of the big blowout for your character. And if you and it also has a lot to do with who's present in what time, you know, in which session. So that's kind of an interesting question. What do we do? I mean, that's the point. Do we care? Are we making an epic, or are we accidentally creating an epic? And if we're accidentally creating one, then we shouldn't stop. We shouldn't, you know, try harder to make one in the middle. So it's kind of a good question. So I began it with the idea, this is irresponsible authorship. Do we have the guts to keep being irresponsible and seeing what the procedures yield? Even if some characters end up with a more forward or a more coherent thematic presence or conclusions, and some don't?
I mean,
it's a good question. Right.
Yeah. I think due to the way the game works, you don't feel like you feel part of the thing. Like with Diamond, for example, we've all contributed to it, and when I go and attack this ability, I know what I'm doing, and I'm playing with it as well. So
I would have said the first 4 sessions were almost more Diamond story than they were any of the main characters, per se.
Which I think is a fine thing. And I really think that's a good thing. I mean, I really never expected to see Thanos appear in play like that. And when we got one, we actually got a cosmic entity that is relevant to most of us and and affecting all of us. And I really, really liked that. That was I'm good with that. And so in some ways, I kind of like the way that your characters are improvisational splats of paint thrown against the wall, and we don't really know we don't really think that it's really about you necessarily. Mm-hmm. Ideally, I would really like to see Captain Marvel and Adam Warlock appear as the kind of protagonists that they became through the course of 10 years of writing comics. Mm-hmm. From 1968, when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, 67 or 68, created him in the Fantastic Four. And then Roy Thomas takes Adam Warlock into this whole alternate Earth Jesus story. And then at the same time, Roy Thomas takes Captain Marvel and makes a new character, Captain Marvel. And then later, different people write them into different stories in different ways. And then Jim Starlin takes both of them and makes this insane epic with the help of several other authors through their comics. And so it's so unplanned, and there are characters who were more important than them. What if one of the characters was the High Evolutionary? What if one of the in our game, what if one of our characters was the High Evolutionary? And was ruined, destroyed, thrown out of the story at the end of the Jesus part.
I don't know who the High Evolutionary is.
Right. Yeah. The High Evolutionary was one of the cosmic characters that was created in the late 60s in Marvel Comics. Roy Thomas used him as God for alternate Earth. And Adam Warlock was his anointed son, or son analog, who decided that God, the High Evolutionary, was a bastard, and decided to defy him or to question him. And then the animal-created humans of alternate Earth started listening to Adam Warlock, and suffice to say, there is an electronic crucifixion in space of Adam Warlock.
Okay.
Right. So, but at the end of that, the High Evolutionary becomes less... In the later saga of Adam Warlock, nobody writes about him anymore. He's gone. And I'm trying to think about what happened to him in the story, but let's say he was roundly defeated at one point. So it's actually conceivable that a character would be literally out of the story.
As in written out of existence.
Right, and we have a mechanic for it. It's called dead.
Right.
If you have a complete victory against you, and in a game like Hero Wars where you're fighting with axes, and occasionally using strange mystic events, a character can die. Mm-hmm. So is that the equivalent here? That your character basically is over?
Yeah, if you're playing around with the cosmic abilities, you can presumably scrub out, the idea of the character ever existing.
You could go that far, or you could be a little more just plain narrative about it, and we just never bother again. That character has been... Yeah, go ahead, Gordon.
I was going to say, you could have some of those details depend upon whether you are killed personally, killed super heroically, or killed cosmically.
True. Ahel's character was completely, right? It was a complete victory against you. Is that correct? Was that right? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was you.
Yeah, complete victory against him, if death was on the table in the fiction, would have killed the character.
Right.
And what Alex did was put him into stasis. And it was a super stasis. So that's kind of interesting. Huh.
Okay.
I like that. Personal death kills you for real. Cosmic death metaphysically erases you, either from every time or at least from now on, right? Super death, you can come back. I think that makes a lot of sense, don't you?
It does.
Yeah. That's very... I actually have almost an image for each of those. Personal death is like, one of the best comics of this whole sequence from the 70s, right? It's called The Death of Captain Marvel. It's a graphic novel by Jim Starlin.
Okay.
And it is an extremely realistic and an extremely sad story of Captain Marvel dying of cancer. And there's
Sounds pretty personal.
It is.
Yeah.
So that's your personal death story right there, for real. Look at Adam Warlock's cosmic death. When he kills his future self, or his in-between self kills himself so that he won't become his future self. And at least as written at the time, was actually erased from the continuity. We can look at these different finalities for the characters and say that's really an option. If you get a complete defeat at the personal level, you kind of have the capacity of being killed.
Yeah.
If you have a complete defeat at the cosmic level, that should be an epic event which makes your character null and void, no pun intended, somehow. I mean, maybe they did exist up until now, maybe they didn't, but whatever takes them out of play should alter the whole equation of the universe, the multiverse, the maxiverse. I have it, the omniverse. Sorry, Morgan, what?
One option that you might go with, just to spitball for a second, is a defeat on a particular level, cosmic, personal, or super, might just erase the character on that level.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
So if you die on the personal level, you're physically dead, but maybe the cosmic part of you latches on to a different subject elsewhere.
Wow, that's kind of intense.
You're reduced to being mortal.
So that would mean that Ihel, for example, could be required to rewrite his entire... Well, wait. You're defeated on the super level, meaning the other person's super level. Right. So would that destroy his super level?
We actually talked about that last session.
Yeah.
Because there was a chance of maybe killing.
Right.
I think I talked to killing Stephen Baxter, right?
Right.
So if Stephen Baxter dies, but Demetrius, the Star Child, might still survive. Though it was interesting because there were two conflicts. I first tried to attack him with destructor beams.
Right.
Which immediately suggests him dying, which is when we talked about it. And then afterwards, I attacked him with stasis beams because the destructor beams...
Right, but you did defeat him with the stasis beams.
Yeah.
But even in stasis, Ihel has the painful or interesting option of leaving Stephen Baxter in stasis forever. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. And now having a completely different personal...
Yeah, this is like...
that's kind of cool, actually.
The Winter Soldier becoming Captain America, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Or the Eternal Champion, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Goodbye to that particular vessel. That's kind of...
I really like the way that the mechanics tie into the fiction with this. There's lots of possibilities of where to go with it, but just making the mechanics relevant to this sounds great.
And I'm surprised at how well it matches. Some of this, I mean, it sounds like it's, wow, Ron nailed it. Well, no, Ron discovered that he nailed it. I'm as amazed at some of you going, really? You mean it worked? He wasn't attacking an ability, he was attacking a keyword. I mean, that's serious business. You get a complete defeat against a keyword, I can't see any reason why that keyword should be permitted to exist from that point on.
Yeah, like the last session, I just wasn't aware of like the whole full defeat, so we didn't go through the details into what would mean that. Right,
that's what I'm trying to figure out now, especially because, as Gordon is correct, there are different options for every single possible role. There are several abilities in play, and there are two roles. There's the attacker and the defender. So it needs to be written out in some way.